Hello, and I'm Mikuláš, as was said before, and I am from Alliance for Family, Czech Republic. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for inviting me, and I would like to also thank you to everyone who is listening to me here in the room or online, now or later, because there are beautiful speeches throughout the day, today and yesterday as well. And I am honored that you made time and found my presentation worthwhile, or my speech worthwhile, or worth of your time. So at the start, I will just shortly introduce Alliance for Family. I will introduce the theme of my speech and introduce the title or the name of the speech as I given it. And I will also then talk about the things from the presentation, what parts are there, that there will be the part dedicated to the judiciary, to the civil service, and many more, as I will explain in a minute. So, from the start, I am from Alliance for Family, which is a pro-family organization which lobbies in our parliament for the pro-family policies for many themes. The main theme in Czech Republic right now is the same-sex marriage. And we had 100,000 people supporting our petition to define marriage as a relationship between men and women in our constitution. We also oppose gender ideology in education, call for flaws of transgender healthcare, and many, many other connected issues. As for me, I am responsible for the legal side of things as a legal student on our law faculty in Czech Republic. I write either articles about gender ideology in schools, I monitor EU agenda in our parliament, and I write down whatever legal filling needs to be done. If it doesn't matter if it's to secure the objective reporting from our public media, reports for members of our parliament, and many more. I also believe that my speech will be complementary to some of the speeches that were here yesterday and also today, as there were many great general ideas, and I will bring you some of the examples from the Czech perspective of how these dangerous ideologies may influence the state of the human rights in a state. As for the title of my presentation or my speech, which is being unopposed to human rights is not enough, Czech Republic's example, I found out that there was some confusion about whether I think that I will talk about all of the great things which we have done, but that will unfortunately not be the case. The case or the reasoning behind this title is actually that the Czech Republic is somewhere in the middle on the natural rights. We do not have strong conservative movement in the same sense that the Poland has, for example. But there is also not terrible from the point of perspective that we do not have some such terrible initiatives as we talked about before in Scotland or in Canada. Some of the laws which are passing in there are truly not the things which would be promoted in here. And so we do not have, as I said before, the strong conservative movement like the Poland. At the same time, we carried ourselves some sad memories from the communist regime years, which make us generally reluctant to support some liberating ideas about human beings, about the human nature, which are important part of many so-called fake human rights. So whenever we hear about, or many people in Czech Republic, when they do hear about liberating somebody from the chains of society, biological sex, marriage, we know, and many of us know, that actually this means breaking from the chains of reality, which is an impossible task to do, and it's foolish to try so. So we are not hit by the progressive plague of human mind, as some of the countries in the West are, but at the same time, we are not actively supporting natural rights in all the ways which we and Alliance for Family would like to do so. But I will argue that this sort of neutral state of things is in no way beneficial for us, as there are many institutions which more often than not are filled with people who are opposing the natural rights that might be For example, the judicial system, civil service, academia, international corporations, and many more. The elite of the state, and I mean this one completely neutrally, just like the people who work in this institution. So this presentation is about how being neutral or passively opposed to these fake human rights is not enough, and also some ways to change it. I will first take care of the legal field, mainly the judiciary. Then I will move to the civil service and state grants, grants. And then I will move also about some examples from the Czech Republic about the influence of academia and of the foreign diplomacy and the state of human rights. So, but mainly on the legal field and mainly on the civil service and the state grants and giving out money to progressive organizations. And depending on how much time will be left at the end, that will decide how many things we'll actually cover in this presentation. So, about the legal field, I of course can't skip my own field, as the students who leave law faculties are of a huge importance, and I do not say it to make me sound important, but they unfortunately, they directly influence the way the law is implemented, they directly influence the law is interpreted, as every ministry must have lawyers, every international corporation has a legal department, and of course, courts are filled with lawyers. And how do they think of the natural rights is very much important for the way that these rights are implemented in a country. Firstly, I want to talk about one court case, which came to our constitutional court and was decided in the year 2017, which was very much negatively impacting the child's human rights on this issue. The story goes as this one. The two men from California brought the child via surrogacy from a surrogacy mother, and one of them is father of said child, but they do not know which one. They have intentionally done it, so they themselves do not know who of them is the father of the child. So, and they moved from the United States to Czech Republic, and they demanded to be recognized as child's parents, as they were recognized so in the USA, or at least in California. And so they demanded to be recognized as the child's parents, both of them, in Czech Republic. They brought it to the Czech state bodies, and they were denied. So they filed a petition to a court, and the courts at the end, our system of courts denied their motion. Last one which denied this one case was the Supreme Court, and they denied such motion on the basis of public order. We do not have same-sex marriage. We do not have it before. We do not have it now. So, and also our legal system is as a whole made that there is, for example, on our birth certificates that you have the column for mother and a father. So they said that this is like nonsense from the sense of our legal system to write them both in as a parents, also because like the documents and so on are simply not made of that, and they thought that this one is actually, this one decision would be against the public order. One note that our Supreme Court doesn't have the same role as the US Supreme Court. We have a constitutional court for that, which tackles the issues of the Constitution and the human rights, which is the court where they went next, these two same-sex parents. And their request, their motion was granted by the Constitutional Court. And what's even more interesting about this decision is the reasoning behind the decision and how it was written. The Constitutional Court directly stated that there was no reason not to recognize both men as parents, which would also take into account, or which would also consider the best interests of the child. That was pretty much a direct quote from this decision. And they also remarked that such reasons or such questions which could arise could be the question of child's relationship or relations to biological parents, or need to stop human trafficking? Well, the Constitutional Court did not have questions about it, but I do have some questions about that and about this one. Firstly, this practice, the surrogacy, it enables, and from its definition, it cuts off the children from its mother by design, and it's a decision which is done for the rest of their lives, and it's the decision which is done before they are even born. So it's in our alliance, we take it as the very much threat to human rights of the children and of the women as well. And also, they are now living in the home with two men, which one of them is the father, but they do not know who of them, the children. This case was about one of them. There were two separate cases or two separate legal proceedings for both of them. But of course, it impacted both of them pretty much the same. So it was also like an interesting question to ask, why was the decision not to know who is the father taken by the both men, whether they thought that, like, knowing that one of them is actually the biological parent would somehow change their perspective of a child of one of them, and there might arise some problems, and whether they have asked whether these questions may arise for the children as well in its upbringing, and whether the child would actually think of this as a problem and so on. Whether maybe the child would behave differently toward one of them and they did not know, or they themselves towards each other or towards the children. So this is the question which was presumably not asked in this case, and it was not asked by the court as well. The Supreme Court before decided that the surrogacy is not a violation of a public order, if it's at least in the case of like the California and when it has some legal framework and so on. And the Constitutional Court added that they did not find this decision to be reviewed, or this reasoning about this surrogacy, as in our state, the surrogacy in Czech Republic, it's not really legal. It's not directly stated like what is the surrogacy and that it needs to be protected and so on. But also it's not directly forbidden or prohibited. So this is also the way with which the court thought as well. And the Constitutional Court, and this is absolutely cynical, at least for me, then also added that this case is in no way endorsing surrogacy. Maybe in its reasoning it's not, maybe they have not written it in there, but it's very much, the judge very much well knew what she was doing when she was writing this one, and when she was writing this one decision. This is the step towards protecting the people who buy children via this practice. And maybe it's not written out in the reasoning, but the the outcomes of these decisions are very much the same, whether they do write it in or whether they do not write it in at all. And right now there is also new law was was introduced to our House of Parliament, which is putting surrogacy under the criminal code, into the criminal code, under the paragraph or under the Criminal Act of Human Trafficking, like explicitly writing it in there. So that is one thing which we very much do support, and we very much do believe that this practice is terrible, especially for the children. And so, by the way, the judge reporter on this case is now at the European Court for Human Rights in Strasbourg. And on that note of this decision by our Constitutional Court, the courts around the Czech Republic started thinking of ways to put same-sex couples in a birth certificate, which, as I said before, was not made for it very much. So I did not review the cases, but I saw some articles about how some state bodies or how the courts tried to put the two people of the same sex, the partners, both under the mother section, so there were two mothers and the column for father was empty, or that there was some tries to put it in the note section at the end, one of the parents, or one of the social parents at least, with this one. And at the end, in this year, the Ministry of Interior, or the Minister of Interior, who is for such ideas, we can say, who supports the LGBT agenda, created a new second form of the birth certificate, which we have. So now, as it stands right now, we will have a birth certificate where there will be written mother and father, and the second form of the certificate where there will be written parent and parent, this one. So it's directly, so in the few years, also from the big part, very much thanks to this decision, we will have the state policy shifted from protecting the bond of the children to its natural parents and to at least generally follow the natural relationships between the father and mother and the child, to at least do not directly contradict them. It took the position, and the state bodies took the position, to actually protect the people who get the children, no matter how much immoral or damaging for the children this way might be. So this is one very important case. This is one very important case how the courts, which are supposed to protect the natural rights, actually undermined it and very much helped the way and paved the way for this decision. It's important to add that the minister who was introducing this idea, that he was actually saying that the reason why this second form of the birth certificate is being issued is because of the courts cases, because of the courts decisions, because it's of course made it sound logically that they say that there must be some way to recognize two parents, so we must have a way to recognize them in this one certificate as well. So this is unfortunately the case of that he has said that our expert independent court decided that, so we have to follow it, although he did not have to do it at all, but it was only pretty much the last way to solidify this decision into our legal system. And that was not the first time. I will also talk about it a little bit about in the second part of my presentation, or the next part of our presentation, that this was not the first time this idea was being issued, was introduced. It was maybe 2 to 3 years before. Some ministers tried it as well, pretty much the same idea. And we stopped it at the time. We stopped that, but unfortunately it seems that this time the minister is putting much more work and effort into defending this decision than the previous one. So one thing from this, that it's a very much dangerous thing to interpret the right for a family life or for a parent, to interpret it as the right of the adult people or of the parents or the social parents to get a child, no matter what way it may seem, no matter what way will it be. One thing which is very much important, and I always hear in this case that we are being accused sometimes that when we are talking this way, that we want to take the children away from its at least social parents, from the people who are bringing them up for many years, and then we would like to take them away. That's of course not true. Nobody wants to just come into the family and tell them, well, you were raising these children for 10 years, but now we have found out that you were. Now that we have found out about this one thing, we will take it away and put it somewhere else into some other family and so on. Nobody is saying that. We are just saying that this way of protecting the ways to get to children, which are damaging to children, are not right and should not be actively protected by the law. And also, so therefore, I would like to make an appeal to make sure to influence the young lawyers, to work with them if you have an NGO, non-governmental organization, to make them part of your teams, to use programs such as the ADF has, Alliance Defending Freedom for Young Lawyers, which they can take part in and improve their legal skills and their sense for what the human rights are and how to defend them. Our vice president went to a program. It was very much a beneficial thing for him. And so make sure to influence the future lawyers, judges, state attorneys or prosecutors, judges, state attorneys, and the attorneys as well, because in all of these problems which we are solving out today, the legal part of things is very much important, and even one very great attorney can make a difference. We know several lawyers, or one lawyer at least, or an attorney who has several key victories in the fight for the autonomy of the churches, or against the decisions which violate this basic right, this basic restriction on the government to not interfere in the church, in the religious freedoms. So only one of them, which is very much skilled and is very much known on how to make these things, can make a difference for people's lives. Next part of our presentation will be called the taxpayers' money in the wrong hands, and it will take mainly the civil service and also a little bit of academia. So one of the big tools of our opponents is the redistribution of the taxpayers' money, of the public money, to the progressive organization. So they can use those money to put forward their agenda, whether it's LGBT ideology, gender ideology, however you want to call it. So in some examples from the Czech Republic on how this control might work. And we all know about the EU's rage against Hungary when they decided to keep gender ideology out of schools and prohibited promoting gender transitions at schools, and etc., and call it a huge violation of the human rights. I've also found out on the internet magazine of my university, Charles University in Prague. I think it was last year that they put forward that they have done gender audit, or they have done audit of the equal opportunities at the university as the preparation to put forward the gender action plan, or the equal opportunities plan at our school. And the reasoning for that was bluntly stated at like this from the first to third sentence, was that it is mandatory now to have a gender action plan, or this kind of plan at university, to be able to get your scientific research financed by the EU. It was bluntly stated that way, that this is the reason we are putting it forward. And I do not know about the academia in your countries, but at least in the Czech Republic, the academia is usually very sensitive about these issues, about government having an interference, or putting out an interference into the scientific freedom and to the freedom of research. However, this time, I pretty much did not hear about it, that they are putting this thing which is very important for the universities, to which projects and which researchers will get supported financially and which will not. But the Charles University did not protest, or any other university which I have heard about in Czech Republic, and they put it explicitly on their website that it has been placed for this reason, and also they boasted about how much work they have put into it, in the sense that they have done this gender audit in order to make sure that this one equal opportunities plan, or the gender action plan, will be actually followed, that it will be actually solid, and talk about, and put there also one sentence that some universities did it without it, and so on, but we actually put work into it, so we have actually made sure to please our EU overlords as best as it is possible. And they did not put forward any sort of protest about that this one thing would be, might be a very damaging thing for the independence of the scientific research. So control over the state grants and of the support is one of the most powerful tool of the progressive school of thought. It makes sure also that when explicitly woke politicians are out of office, their influence will still be significant, they will still get money, the organization which put forward the progressive agenda will still get money, that they will still get influence from this one. And one of those things is done by infiltrating the civil service, the ministries, the bureaucratic bodies, and so on. Of course, this is also done by the EU. The lobbyists for the same-sex marriage in Czech Republic got a huge amount of money from the EU, more than we, their main rival, make in the same period of time, just from this one income which they got. And so I will talk right here about the international treaties, the grants, and the high-ranking bureaucrats in the positions of power, which may change the way the money and the influence is being distributed from the state. First, just a short note for the international treaties, that the best way to put this forward is through an international treaty, because once you sign it and once you ratify it, it's very hard to back out of it. So today there was already mentioned the Istanbul Convention, which says in its Article 8 that parties shall allocate appropriate financial and human resources for the adequate implementation of integrated policies, measures and programs, etc., including those carried out by non-governmental organizations and civil society. And also there is, of course, a part about how this plan must be executed also in the school curriculum and in schools and so on. So we very much know who would these money go to if this was implemented in Czech Republic, which still it was not ratified, this Istanbul Convention, and which way would the goals of the convention would be interpreted, and in which way and against whom. So the goal is clear: to make the progressive NGOs get money and influence when they are politicians of the same opinion spectrum are not in power. I was also watching other things when the Ministry of Education put forward an action plan, a gender action plan, and it was interesting because at that time there was a minister in there from the party, and he himself seemed minded in a similar way, like-minded, that they were not truly conservative, they were not truly progressive at all, this was not truly the agenda which they took forward. But this one plan was done, and it was done by inviting members of the academia, pretty much the wokest member of the academia, who consulted or made or written out this one program. And so I believe that if I would go with this gender action plan which they put forward and go with it to the voters of said party for which he was minister, and told them about this plan and whether they would vote for it or no, that would be overwhelmingly said no, that this is not truly things maybe they even take that they do not even take care of that, and so on. So there is this gender action plan, and these plans are made for years in advance. If you said the gender action plan was made in the way that was from the year 2020 to year 2024 or 2025, it's just made for many years in advance. And so if the government changes, this plan still does not change, and these policies are still being implemented by the civil service on its own. So there are actually, which I want to talk about, the three types of politicians or ministers or politicians as a whole. There is the progressive one, the one which I talked right now, which is not really for, not really actively against that, and the conservatives, which also might in some way not protect people from these programs. The progressive one is sure that they will put a lot of power and resources into defending these programs if you attack them for them and anything like that. If there is also, but unfortunately, if there is also these sort of neutral politicians, the institutions around him will still work in the same way as they did before, when they will not be opposed. And so that was actually the issue, as I said before, with the birth certificates. That before there was a politician who did not have it as important part of his agenda, this LGBT agenda about surrogacy and so on. So we made we used pressure on him, we pressured him thanks to our supporters and so on, to write on the ministry, to write to the minister, to write to the like-minded politicians, so they could speak out against that. And we stopped that because the minister just said that this thing was not worth his times and effort so much as it seemed as it would take to actually put this forward. But unfortunately, this new Ministry of the Interior is very much standing against that, and he's making pledges that he will truly see this one through. So even though we had a huge amount of, as we know, a huge amount of people, of our supporters, actually writing to the politicians and to the ministry and trying to influence the ministry and the minister to put this thing out, to stop implementing this idea, it still seems that they will very much likely still go through with it. So that was what I was also meaning by the title of the speech, that opposing that being unopposed to human rights is not enough. There must be clearly and explicitly a politician who is standing for the natural rights, a politician who is willing to spend his time on this one and who takes it as important. And there is unfortunately a chance that even though you will get a conservative politician, that they will not be, for many and plethora of reasons, willing to put forward their efforts and to put forward their time for these things. So that, for example, we had some politicians saying lately that the same-sex marriage should be passed, the law about the same-sex marriage should get passed through our parliament, because, well, it's taking too much time and we want to get on the other issues and we want to just stop taking care about that, which if you are a politician for many, many years and you saw how these policies work and you saw how this movement against natural rights work and you are truly thinking in this way, I believe that there is a huge problem in actually, in seeing that this politician might not actually see what this movement is about, that they do not know how they work, which is very much important in fighting them, or maybe they might not be that much actually interested, or they do not understand the importance of the family for the state, and they should definitely know that as a politician. So do not think that just because they are like-minded people on good positions, that they will always take your stance and they will always protect the rights as they should be. We had, for example, right now we have a government which is split up, that there are some ministers and some politicians of the coalition which are actually very good at protecting the natural rights, actually quite conservative. But we have also some politicians who are of the opposite opinions, and so there was also a thing that we have right now, position which is called, probably best translated as the Government's Commissioner for Human Rights, and the person on this position, even though there is many government politicians who are actually very good and very much conservative, she actually written a Facebook post where she attacked a hospital and a sexologist which was giving presentation there about transgender healthcare, and he was negative about some of its aspects. We know that this expert is not actually explicitly friend of the alliance or ally of the alliance, that he sometimes put also things which we do very much disagree with, but he just talked negatively about some of its aspects of the transgender medicine, and he raised doubts about some of its aspects, and she actually called him out on the Facebook post and told the hospital, the most expert body which can be on these issues, to delete these materials from their website. And it was, I do believe it was actually also an older presentation, that it was not done in that week and so on, that this was very, very much a long time ago. But for some reason, she thought that this would be a great idea and that this would be a thing which she should do to protect the rights of the trans youth and so on. So this is also very much important, not only where the money go, but which important state, which important what way do the important bureaus and important bodies of the state are run by. So also, I have heard that I think it was yesterday, that you do not have drag queen readings for children here in Lithuania, or at least not very much. It's not very much a theme, so we find out that there will be actually, at least as far as we know, the first or one of the first drag queen readings for children about the queer themes and about several sexual identities and so on. And it's actually supported by the public money as well, or at least it's Pride Week event in which it takes place. So this is very much a thing which people must take interest in. Where are their money going, even from their state, or from their municipalities, from the city councils, where are they going? I would also encourage you to watch the Christopher Rufo is the name of the political strategist in the United States who came on the board of the public university in Florida, which had very much woke policies and changed it. So this is one very much thing to look for and to maybe inspire yourself. Also, when you have the power over the elected bodies, do not hesitate to use them to advance the agenda of yours, to protect the natural rights, to cut the progressive organizations from the government's money and so on, because you should not let your money, actually, the government's money or the taxpayers' money, to be used to paint you as a villain, as a homophobic or transphobic. You have absolutely every right to do so. And you will, of course, get attacked by the so-called human rights activists, but you will get attacked absolutely no matter what you do, and you should also make sure that your politicians know that and they are standing firmly behind the natural rights and that they will stand firmly and to protect them. I will just make also a short note about the diplomacy and the business corporations. Unfortunately, not all money which will go to the progressive organizations can be stopped, even, I would not like to say this way, but as simply as just by changing the government. There was recently a new ambassador to the Czech Republic, who one of the first things which he done was to go on Twitter on his first weeks or short few months in his position, to go on Twitter and to go on the interview in the media to talk about how the Czech people should definitely pass the same-sex marriage laws and to pass the same-sex marriage. And he does it in the way, it's like interesting thing that is definitely a sovereign ambassador of the sovereign state, but sometimes, especially if they do this one thing so with such conviction, that it seems pretty much like they are just arrogantly lecturing the Eastern Europeans on how the human rights should be actually fought for and how they should be actually implemented. So this is a thing but it's not actually like his mistake that he is doing it. It's absolutely one of the important actually goals of foreign diplomacy of many nations to pass and to support this agenda in other states. So it's not just just the problem of somebody talking about it, it's problem of actually supporting those organizations financially. And it's a big part of foreign diplomacy of many states. And of course, the companies donate a lot of money to the LGBT organizations. You definitely know a lot of them, which use their money to put forward and to support these agendas. So you will have, unfortunately, So you will have, unfortunately, at this time and probably for some time in the future, to work against this kind of money, which you can't stop in any way, pretty much, because you can tell, of course, the corporations what to do, and you have very limited tools to work against these type of money. So you will have to disrupt the functioning, disrupt those initiatives, as we talked about the birth certificates, about the first try, to make it just as costly for the people who want to put these things forward, especially in the government, as possible, and to make as many organizations withdraw their support from these projects, for calling out the flaws in their ideology of the LGBT or gender ideology, even though they might have much more sufficient financing, and you will be kind of working against actually the against big financial power. And so that is the reason why I put forward and why I would like to say that the active support of the natural rights is very much important. It's very much important to make as many people from the general population take care of these things and to take care of these rights in order to stop those agendas, as well as taking care of your elites. Again, I'm saying it in an absolutely neutral manner. The people who have the power over implementation of the human rights and interpreting the human rights in your state. So thank you, everyone who found time to listen to me, and big thank for the organizers of this conference for letting me speak here. And thank you very much. And remember, you are on the right side of history, and we will win. Thank you.